Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play. I'm Mike, and I'm here to talk about some more rules for stuff. This is a setup and rules video for a pre-Kickstarter iteration of The Fall, which is a game that combines components from Mysthea, which is Tabula Games' territory control game, hand management stuff game, and Icaion, which is their Kickstarter. This is actually during the Kickstarter for Icaion, but when you're watching this video, it might be much later, I don't know. But the point is that if you have the retail copy of this, or you've got your Kickstarter copy of this, or whatever you've got, this is combinable with this to make this. And I'm going to teach you about this, which is called Mysthea the Fall. This is a castle defense game in which we're combining elements from this game into this game to create a fully cooperative experience for 2 to 4 players that plays in, they say 90 minutes to 2 hours. We've found that the game length can vary a lot, but that's probably because this is pre-Kickstarter, during Kickstarter, but basically this is a pre-Kickstarter prototype, so there could be some serious changes before you get the final product. But I'm going to run you through sort of what the basics of the game are so that you understand. So what I'm not going to do is my full sort of usual in-depth breakdown, but I'm just going to give you sort of as much of an overview as you need to understand what's going on. And as you can see here, I've got all the components laid out from both sets in order to explain how that's done. So we'll have a quick look at all these pieces, and then we'll have a quick talk about how to set up the board, and then we'll have a quick rundown of what you'll do during the game, just like normal, only slightly briefer. And I would just point out that, as usual, all of the sections are in the description below, so if there's something that you're particularly interested in, or you just want to get a sense of all of the different things in the game, you can have a look at those sections to find out what's included. So, with that in mind, let's take a brief look at these 3 sets of components I've got laid out on the table here. So as you can see here, we've got lots and lots of components. Now these are all the components we'll need from Mysthea. And you'll recognize these if you've got a copy of Mysthea at home, that these are all things that you will have in your Kickstarter version or retail copy. And this is all the stuff you're instructed to get out for the fall. So what we've got here are all of the miniatures, including all of the golems, all of the troops, all of the monsters up here, and all of the champions down here. We've got the 5 floating islands that come with the game. We've got this little baggie that doesn't actually have a purpose in Mysthea, but is used in the fall. We've got here the 5 cards that are used for the land regions in the events deck. We've got the storm card here as well. This is the one that moves the monster in Mysthea. Then we've got these 3 decks of command cards. Now there are 4 decks of command cards in Mysthea, but we don't need the starter cards. We just need the 3 era cards. Then we've got these, which are fortresses, and we've got all 5 sets of those. And then we've got the artifacts, and that is everything we need from Mysthea. Now here we've got everything we need from the Icaion board game. And this includes the board with the craters and the regions and whatnots. We've got the event board as well. We've got the Colossus miniature and the primal shards, all of those. We've got 4 player rings. 4 of them, there are 4. We've got 3 Colossus cards, we've got 5 region cards, we've got all of the emergency power supplies, we've got each player's buildings. Of course, these are the wooden prototype pieces that we were given, but these will be cool miniatures in the final version. We've also got all 25 parasites, and we've got all of the pieces of different colored Qoam as well, which you will need all 5 colors of that. So that's all you'll need from that. Additionally, we've got this bespoke monsters deck. This relates to all the monsters from Mysthea, but it's actually unique for the fall. So this is something that's special that will be provided with Icaion, but it's only used with the fall board game. So one of those for each of the models from the original Mysthea game. We've got another set of buildings. Now, because this is a prototype, these look completely different to the buildings we've been using here on the channel, but these are all the same thing. So you'll need 5 sets of buildings to play the fall, but because there's only 4 players in Icaion, you've only got 4 sets of buildings in that, so this comes with an extra set of buildings for you to use. And these are the abandoned buildings. More about that when we get to the gameplay. You've also got a set of unique seeker cards here, so there's one for each of the 4 seekers in Icaion, And this is obviously, again, the prototype selection. Maybe there will be more in the final game. But in the meantime, these are different and distinct to the versions of these cards that you get in the actual, that you use for Icaion. These are only for the fall. And we've got a special set of fall cards for the champions from Mysthea as well. And these have got their special The Fall powers on them, so they are distinct from the ones that come with the Mysthea version of the game. So now that we've had a chance to look at that, what we're going to do is we're going to talk through how to set up the board and the game. So we'll set out the Mysthea event board and make sure that you've got the correct side face up. So this is the 2-player side or 3-player side, but you can also use the 4-player side. So we'll play on the 2-player side. Next we're going to set up the board from Icaion, and all we have to do is take the board, and then we're going to put out the islands from Mysthea onto the board, and there's a side with all the resources and icons and stuff on it, so just put them down with the plain side up, and just randomly stick them into all of the different craters on the board here. Cool, so that's done. We've got all the islands set up there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take 4 of these golems and put 4 golems on each island. Each island is divided into 3 regions, so you're going to put all 4 golems into a single region on the island, and the point is that once you've put all 5 regions out, each set of golems must be in a different kind of region. So if I put these 4 here on this island, that's the mountain set of golems, and I won't have another mountain set. There we go, golems populated. Now what we're going to do is take 4 troops and populate them into the other empty regions on the islands. And the orientation of the islands for this part of the setup doesn't matter, because all of the island circumference is adjacent to the board. So now that I've set up all of the islands here with all of the troops and the golems on them and stuff, I just need to make sure that my Qoam and my parasites are set up in a common pool that everyone can reach. These resources are infinite, so it's fine to just set them to one side. And the next thing we're going to do is actually choose the difficulty of the game, because what we're going to do is, based on the difficulties, get a different distribution of these primal shards, and the distribution of the primal shards we include in the game will determine the difficulty. So here's a chart. If we're playing on easy, we'll include 10 primal shards, 3 with a 1, 2 with a 3, and 5 2s. If we were to play on hard, we'd only have 1 1, 4 2s, and 5 3s. So we'll collect a set of 10 primal shards to set the difficulty. And so here are the 10 primal shards I'm going to use to play the game on the normal difficulty. So I'm going to take those 10 primal shards and I'm going to put them here into the Mysthea baggie. Actually, much like we did on our Icaion playthrough. And then what we're going to do, the next thing we're going to do, is actually draw out 5 at random, which is why we put them in the baggie. And we're just going to put them into the Colossus's base without looking at them. And then we deploy the Colossus somewhere on one of the nodes that is on the outside of the board, not touching a crater. So like here, or here, or here. And it's supposed to be random, so I'll just put him here. That's fine. I've got 1 primal shard left, and this is just used to track the city's hit points. The city starts on 100 hit points, so I'll put it down here, and we'll be tracking back across this border on the outside. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put out the machinery in sets on the board. So what we're going to do here is take all the machines of 1 color and put them into the sets of 3. So we've got each different kind of machine in each set. So here I've got a scavenger, a refiner, and a harvester. Same here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the machines of this color into a single region. And it doesn't actually matter which color goes into which region. What is important is that they're consistent. So now that I've put the 3 blue ones here into the river region, I'm going to put these 3 blue ones into the other river region over here. And the final 3 will go into the last river region on the board. And now what I'm going to do is do that with all of the different color machines. And the colors doesn't matter. I try to match them up so it's a bit more intuitive, but at the end of the day, what's important is that each color is associated with a region type, and it's consistent. And if you remember the set of abandoned machinery that came with the fall special pieces, this is going to populate the last land type on the board. So we've got here the mists, and that's just going to have these going out. So the oldest player becomes the first player, and they get to pick the first character. And if you remember, we've got these 2 decks of cards here. We've got our Seekers from Icaion as the fall characters, and our Champions from Mysthea as more the fall characters. And we've got these divided into 2 decks, which is why they have 2 distinct backs. Give it a shuffle first. Our first player is going to draw the top card from one deck. It's Kolbor and Malibor, so that's going to be their character. So they'll fetch the Mysthea miniature for that, and then they'll pick a color. And the color you choose is really important because it's going to relate to the different territories on the board here. So Kolbor and Malibor decides to be the red player, so they put the red base on their figure. They get the card. Now, because they are a Mysthea character, they're also going to take the player 1 artifact from Mysthea, and they're going to keep that with them. Now, although we use the artifacts and the emergency power supplies to be able to differentiate whether you are from Mysthea or Icaion, we will refer to all of these tokens from now on as relics, because that's how we do. So the next player in turn order will take the second player piece from the other deck. So because player 1 is got an artifact, that means they've taken a Mysthea character, which means player 2 must take a emergency power supply and a seeker from the top of the deck. And they've got the Lone Ranger. So they'll grab the miniature for the Lone Ranger and put their colored base on it. But I don't have one. I only have those meeples. So the Lone Ranger is going to be our yellow guy. Yay! So the next thing that happens is you get fortifications. And you're going to get fortifications in your color based on the number of which is based on the number of players. So because we're playing a 2-player game, each player is going to get 3 fortifications in their player color, plus 2 in an unused player color. Now, I've picked up these purple ones. There's no purple on the board, but I also don't seem to have any blue ones. I guess this is blue, or it could be green. Let's say purple's blue. So then our red player here is going to get 3 in red, and also picks 2 blue ones. If we're playing the solo variant of the game, we would just be doing exactly the same thing as we do for 2 players, and then just control 2 heroes on our own. And now, starting with the first player, we're going to deploy onto the board. And the first player is going to deploy onto a node that is adjacent to an island, because presumably the champion from Mysthea here has just fallen out of the sky with all the islands from Mysthea. So we'll put our Mysthea champion down here next to this island. And now our Icaion Seeker is going to go out, and they must deploy on a node adjacent to the city. So I guess we'll go down here. And now we'll set up the event board. So what we're going to do here is take the command cards from Mysthea, and we're going to take the Era 1 cards and give them a shuffle, and put them into the Era 1 card slot here on the event board. And then the Era 2 command cards go into the appropriate spot below that, and again with the Era 3 cards. Now what we'll do is we'll take the 5 event cards from Mysthea. We'll take the Storm card. We'll take the Colossus cards. And the 5 event cards from Icaion. And we'll give all of these a shuffle to form an event deck. We're also going to take that special The Fall Monster deck and give that a good shuffle. And put it above the events board here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reveal the top card from the monster deck. And we're going to put that monster on the board. So we've drawn Utkaro, which is this little guy here. And he goes down onto the island of the Weird Tree. And it says in the rulebook that when you put out the monster that you must enact their special rule. And Utkaro's special rule is to deactivate everybody's relics. So we'll deactivate the relics for the players. The last part of setup is to turn over event cards equal to the difficulty of the game and enact them. So I'll just put out 3 and I'll give you a brief overview of what they do as I go. But I'm putting out 3 because we're playing on normal difficulty. On easy it's 2 and on hard it's 4. So the first one is going to be the Colossus card. So I've revealed the Colossus card, and what I'm going to do is implement that on the board along with the next 2 cards I'm going to reveal. But I'll talk you through what I've done and how I did it when we get to the resolving the night phase section of the gameplay, rather than walking you through it now. But the point is that you must resolve all 3 cards as though you were doing 3 night phases consecutively. If you reveal the Storm card, what you do is you set it to one side rather than resolving it, and then just draw another card from the deck. And then once you've finished resolving all 3 cards, take the Storm card if you revealed it, shuffle it back into the events deck. And with that, we're actually ready to begin the game. The game takes place in 2 phases. A day phase, in which our heroes have a certain amount of time to run around the board, carrying out actions trying to protect the city. And a night phase, in which an event card is drawn, which moves around these monsters coming to try and destroy the city, potentially moving also the Colossus as well. Now, there are many ways that we can lose as players. If the city is reduced to 0 hit points, we can lose. And you can see through resolving these cards, I'm already down to 90 hit points. So it's not a great start for me. But if the city ever reaches 0 hit points, we will lose. Monsters can occupy these spaces on the city. If all 5 spaces are ever occupied, then we lose. If the entire population of one of these 5 islands is depleted because all of the monsters have moved off it, the players lose. And if all of your machines are destroyed, you lose. So for example, our red player here is the Mysthea player. If all of the red machines on the board are destroyed, the players lose the game as well. There is only one way to win the game, and that is by making sure that each player has a primal shard from the Colossus's base, and that all the primal shards on the Colossus's base are taken. In a 2-player game, that's fairly easy. In a 4-player game, that's going to be a bit more challenging to orchestrate. But you'll have more actions and more players working together to help you do it. The game will continue until one of the win or loss conditions is reached. So there are 6 actions a player can take: move, collect, deposit, attack enemies, attack a monster, or investigate the Colossus. And they can take 3 in total, and they can also repeat actions. So they could move 3 times, they could attack 3 times. In true Tabula game style, there are also 2 sort of special sub-actions you can do, which involve activating your Relic, or activating one of the machines in your color on the board. And you can do those 2 in addition to the 3 that you can do as well. So you could do a total of 5 things on your turn, but you probably won't be able to do both sub-actions in the same turn. So let's talk first about movement. Because he's a bit easier to see, we'll use our Mysthea champion here for movement. And players move on nodes just like in Icaion, so they can move around these nodes on the board. Unlike Icaion, 2 players cannot end their movement in the same node. Furthermore, if movement is the first action you take on your turn, you can move 2 nodes. However, if you move after you've already taken an action, you can only move 1 node. What players can do to help themselves is they can drop down these fortresses. Now, fortresses are placed as a special action, so we'll talk about that later. If a player moves onto a fortress, they can choose to end their movement there, or they can choose to move 1 more node for free out of that space. This also means that if another player is next to a fortress, a player can spend just 1 movement point to move onto that fortress, and then their free movement point to move onto the other player. Because they can't end their turn there, that player will then bounce them to another adjacent node. And in this way, you create efficient movements moving 4 nodes for the price of 1 movement point. And you've really got to think about how you're going to set this up so you can move around the board very, very quickly and cover all the areas. So that's movement. The second action you can do is collect. Collect is very simple. When your hero is on a node and you collect, you just look at the 3 adjacent regions and collect 1 Qoam in the color of each of the adjacent regions. So in this case, our little yellow man would get a pink Qoam, a blue Qoam, and a brown Qoam from these 3 regions. Unlike in Icaion, the Qoam is just put down next to your character in an infinitely large personal supply. The third action we're going to look at is deposit. If our little yellow meeple winds up adjacent to the city later on, then they can deposit their Qoam into these spaces within the city. You can deposit any amount of Qoam from your personal supply into the city, but you can only put 1 Qoam per space. So, careful planning about what you want to put in the city is critical, because players will be called upon to spend Qoam for different things during the game, and this is a communal pool that any player can draw from. In a 2-player game, that's less relevant, but it's still very, very useful. In a 4-player game, this will be critical, because you'll be wanting each player to be able to do the things that they need to do with Qoam when they need to do it. Now, if the city is full of Qoam already and you want to put in more Qoam, you can. You've just got to discard the Qoam that was there and return it to the supply. Later on, we'll talk about how monsters in regions adjacent to the city might invade the city. Remember, if all of these are occupied, that's a loss condition for the players. And we'll talk about how that happens later, but if a monster enters one of these spaces, then the Qoam in that space is returned to the supply and lost. And this space can no longer be used to store Qoam. The fourth action is attack enemies. So let's talk about that. When you attack enemies, you attack an entire region. So you must make an attack in a region adjacent to the node that you're in. In a rather unfortunate series of events here, it looks like lots and lots of monsters have made it off this island and have come out into the adjacent regions. Our Mysthea champion here has shown up to try and stop this. They decide to attack this red region, which contains one parasite, one troop, and one golem. Now there is a hierarchy to these creatures that is important to note. Golem is first, then troop, then parasite. In order to attack this region, our hero must spend Qoam. And if they want to attack this region, they must spend pink Qoam. Or red Qoam, because it is a crystal region. This one. So, when you spend Qoam to attack a region, what you're going to do is spend one at a time and flip over these command cards up here on the event board. So we spend one pink Qoam, and we get to flip over the top card of the first era deck at the top. And what we're looking at is this command points value up here in the left-hand corner. So that's a 2. So that means we have currently got a strength 2 attack. Now, in this region, we've got a strength 2 golem, a strength 1 troop, and a strength 1 parasite. That means the total strength of our enemies is 4. Now, we don't have to kill them all. We can just partially kill the group and maybe kill the rest off later. But if we want to try and exceed strength 4, we can always buy more combat cards. So if we decide that the 2 we got already is not enough, we can spend another pink Qoam to flip over another card. Now in this case we've been rather unlucky because we've got a 1, which gives us 3. And that's not really enough to kill everybody. Fortunately, we've got one more pink Qoam which we can spend to flip over the last card as well. And that's a 3 on a yellow banner, which gives us a total of 6. 6 is more than 4, so we get to kill all of these guys. When we kill monsters, we must return all of them to the same island. We can choose which island we want to on the board. But we must return them all to the same island. Furthermore, the golems must always return to the region the golems were on an island, whereas troops can be put into any of the 2 regions with troops. Here's the thing, we want to put the monsters back onto an island that's low on monsters, because if you remember, one of our loss conditions is that the island completely empties. So in this case, let's put them back here. The golem into the mountain region where the golems belong, and the troop into this forest where there were troops. We've also killed this parasite. When we kill a parasite, we put it on our player board. Parasites are a special resource that you can hang on to and can be used as a single wild Qoam. Note that you can never have more than 2 at any given time, and you cannot deposit them in the city. Because 6 is more than 4, we've triggered what's called an eradication bonus. If your total strength is greater than the total defense of your enemies, we can have an eradication bonus. And there are 4 different kinds of eradication bonuses we can unlock, and they're based on the color of these banners. So we've got access currently to the blue and yellow eradication bonus. So if you have the yellow eradication bonus, you can move a node. If you have the blue eradication bonus, you can take 1 Qoam of any color from the supply. The red eradication bonus lets you kill 1 troop in an adjacent region. So we can pick off this little man here, and they must go back to an island. Enemies always go back to an island. And the green eradication bonus lets you move 1 troop or golem in any region to an adjacent region. Note this doesn't include the city, and you can't move parasites. And so that's attack enemies. Let's talk about attack a monster. Here's our Mysthea champion, and if our Mysthea champion winds up on a node adjacent to an island, you can attack a monster on that island. Now, attacking a monster on the island works exactly the same way as attacking troops in a region, except instead of needing to spend Qoam matching the color of the region, you can spend Qoam that matches the color of any of the regions on the island. So you can use a mixture of colors in any combination. When you're fighting a monster, you just look at their monster card and you have to equal or better their strength. You can still get an eradication bonus for beating a monster as well. And if you defeat them, they are just removed and returned to the box. Or rather, returned to the monster pool by Icaion. When Icaion is defeated, just put the card on the bottom of the deck. So the last thing we'll look at is investigate the Colossus. Now if you're on the node adjacent to the Colossus, then you can investigate the Colossus. This works a little differently to investigating the Colossus in Icaion. If you want to investigate this Colossus, the first thing you're going to do is pull one of the primal shards from his base. We've got a 1. That's very lucky. Now, what we want to do is claim this primal shard. And in order to do that, we must spend pairs of Qoam equal to the 2 adjacent regions to the Colossus. So in this case, I'm going to spend 1 grey Qoam for this region and 1 pink Qoam for this region. And I'm spending 1 pair because this is a 1. However, if this had come out as a 2 or a 3, I would need up to 6 Qoam in pairs to collect this primal shard. If I do have the Qoam, then I can put it onto my player board, and I'm 1 step closer to the victory condition. After you successfully perform and investigate the Colossus action, you must warp back to a node on the city. If you fail, you stay where you are, and you must return the primal shard to the slot on the Colossus base. Note that you keep your Qoam if you cannot afford it. Those are the 3 actions that you're going to be spending Qoam on. Attack enemies, attack monsters, and investigate the Colossus. Parasites can be spent as part of any of these things as a wild color, so you could use it if you need to make up the investigate the Colossus action. Additionally, you can spend 2 Qoam of a matching color to create 1 Qoam of any other color. So with that, let's talk about the 2 special actions that you can do. The first is activate a machine. That's where you activate a machine of your color somewhere on the board. The second one is activate your relic, and that allows you to do your special player power. So let's look at activate a machine. In order to activate a machine, you must first be adjacent to a region containing your color of machines. So our red player here is adjacent to these red machines. Off he goes. So when you activate a machine, you must pick 1 machine to do the effect of the machine. If you activate the harvester, then you gain 1 Qoam of the color of the region. Add that to your personal supply. If you activate the refinery, then you can kill off 1 enemy in the region. And that can be any enemy, but we don't have any enemies in this region, so it's fine. If you activate the scavenger, then you get to put out a fortress of the color of that machine. You can activate scavengers of other colors in the 2-player mode to put out fortresses of other colors. But in the 3 and 4 player game, because you only have 1 color of fortress, you'll only ever activate 1 color of machines. And that is the activated machine action. Very straightforward. Just pick one of those 3 and do it. Remember, it doesn't count towards the 3 actions you can do for your main actions. It is a freebie, but you must be adjacent to your machines. The last one is activate a relic. Each player character has a relic ability on the bottom of their card, which we can see here and here. Now, when you want to activate this ability, you can do it at any point on your turn, and you flip your relic from the activated side to the deactivated side. For example, the Lone Ranger will pick off an enemy in each region adjacent to the node he's in. And Kolbor and Malabor will gain 3 Qoam of any color that they want to add to their personal supply. Your relic will only refresh when the Storm card comes out or when the event deck is refreshed. So you must think very carefully about when you want to use it. So with that, that's everything that the players can do. Let's talk about the night phase. There are 3 kinds of cards in the event deck. You've got the land types, you've got the Colossus cards, and you've got the Storm card. So we'll go through them in order. But what's important to note about the regions or land cards here is that there are 2 of each type. And the first one that comes out behaves differently to the second one or the other copy of it if that comes out at all. Now, the night phase will continue, revealing cards from the event deck until at least 1 copy of each land type is out, at which point the entire event deck resets. When you reveal a land card, you just put it out on the event board. If it is the first one of its type, then 2 things happen. The first thing that happens is you check the region on the internal section of the board. So we've got the 5 internal regions here directly adjacent to the city. So we've revealed a river card, so we go to the river region here, and then we move into the river region all monsters from adjacent regions. This follows the typical hierarchy, the same hierarchy used for killing monsters. That means golems move in first, followed by troops. Parasites never move, so you don't have to worry about them. So this golem moves in here. And this golem will move in here as well. The second thing that happens is you check to see if any of the islands adjacent to the Colossus, that is on either side of him, have a river region on them. In this case, this island does have a river region, so this island activates as well and spews out 2 more guys into each adjacent region. And we always draw golems first and then troops. So these guys come off this island into here. If that island had had a river region, we'd do the same on that island too. Now, if we happen to draw the second river card, we would put it on top of the first river card like this. And then what we would do is we would activate all of the river regions on the islands. So each island with a river region would activate and just spew troops out into the adjacent spaces. Like this. So it doesn't matter that the troops are not coming out of the river regions. All that matters is that we're activating each island with a river region. Golems always come off first, and then troops. The next card that might come out is a storm card. And if the storm card comes out, what happens is we draw the top card of the monster deck. We take the appropriate miniature and put it on the appropriate island. So Kodor appears here. And then Kodror is going to just be left here, next to the monster deck. The final thing that happens when the storm card is revealed is that each player who has depleted their relic gets to replenish it. Monsters have two negative effects. When they're played, like Kodror has just come out, a special effect will come into play. All of them are different and they're all listed in the rulebook, so I won't go through them all. Suffice to say that when he comes out, all players must remove one of their fortresses from the board if they can. And while he's in play, you cannot use the Activate a Machine free action. So we really want to go and kill him off with the Attack a Monster action. Furthermore, monsters will bolster the Colossus attack when the Colossus attacks. And that's when a Colossus card comes out. So let's look at that now. So the final kind of event card we've got to look at is the Colossus card. And when that comes out, we ignore all of the symbols used for Icaion and always do the same thing no matter which card it is. The first thing that the Colossus does is poop one parasite into each adjacent region. The next thing that he does is move, and we're going to go into this bag and draw out one of the remaining primal shards. So these are one of the ones that wasn't in his base. And what we've got here is a 3. So now he's going to move 3 nodes around the board. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3. So he moves around the outside of the board on the nodes that are touching the board edge but not an island. And we leave the primal shard we drew out of the bag until later. Now that he's done that, he's going to attack. And when he attacks, he does 2 damage for each parasite on the board, and we've got 3 here, so that's 6 damage, plus damage equal to all of the combined strength of all of the monsters. Now in this case, only Kodror is out, which is 8, so he's going to do a total of 14 damage. He's attacked once already, so the city's already on 90, down from 100, and now we're going down to 76, which he's actually standing on. And that's how the Colossus attacks. So the very last thing we're going to look at is what happens when all 5 land types come out. So here you can see we've completed the events board and all 5 land types are out. So now we're going to reset the events deck. So we'll resolve the last event card that came out. Then what we'll do is we'll reset the deck, which includes taking the Storm card, all of the region cards, any Colossus cards, just clearing off the events board here, and just giving the deck a shuffle and resetting it. And the final thing that happens after you've reset the event deck, and we're just going to put it back face down, ready to continue the game, like that. The last thing that happens is that what we're going to do is we're going to reset all of our relics again. And the game will continue, like I said, until one of the victory conditions or loss conditions are met. And that's it. That's everything in the fall. It's actually the simplest of the 3 games in the trilogy, I think. So I hope this has been a useful video, giving you an oversight into how the fall works. I'll be back tomorrow to play it with my buddy Ollie, so if you want to join us for that, we'd love to have you. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to the channel, please. That helps to continue this kind of content coming. And thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully see you all tomorrow.